This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're here with Knut Ørbeck-Nilssen, CEO Maritime, DNV GL. And Knut, thank you very much for taking your time to join us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
And we touched briefly on the future of class, but when you look at the marine industry, generally you're looking at an aging industry. And as you know, when you lose that inherent knowledge, that gap has to be filled. So I guess what I'm getting at, as you look at an aging workforce throughout the industry, you look at the evolution of class in general. How do you see class evolving to step in and fill some of those gaps?
Yeah, I think for most classification societies today, it is a challenge that we are faced with, tough market conditions. So there will not be that much recruiting going on for any classification society over the next few years. So I think we have to really look at how can we engage some of our younger employees that we have already. How can we, leverage the digitalization aspects of shipping that is opening up to make use of the young generation that we have, but also to combine that with the domain knowledge with the older and more experienced employees. And I think for us to really make that connection between, the more experienced, more senior employees and with those younger employees that we do have, I think that is one really very important aspect of that. And we, inside of DNV GL, we just had what we call the Next Generation Summit, where we try to make that linkage and also to utilize the very relevant knowledge that this new generation have of a social media, of a digitalization aspects, and which we can benefit a lot from, because my generation, we have to face it, we're somewhat outdated.
I feel that. But if you could narrow down to three the technologies that you think will have the greatest impact on this industry in the coming, 5 years, what do you see?
Oh, yeah, that is quite a tough question. Well, I think the biggest opportunity for the shipping industry lies within digitalization. I think this will open up opportunities for us to work more efficiently, to have better insights, and if I can phrase it like, so I'm an engineer, and at DNV GL we are a lot of engineers. So we are always looking for the whys. Why are things not working properly? Why are things going wrong, etc. But I think with the possibilities of digitalization, of using big data and making sense of that data, we put on a second set of glasses, and that is really what correlates with what. So not only are we looking at why things are not working properly, but we are looking at what correlates to what. And that gives us a tremendous new insight into, making new sense, making better predictions for the future, seeing when pieces of equipment needs to be maintained or needs to be overhauled. And I think this would really give us a great opportunity to really move to the next level within shipping. So that is maybe more, a general aspect. The flip side of that is naturally cybersecurity. And the more sensors, the more transmittal of data, the more reliant we are on the data, naturally the more important it is to have good control of how that data is kept, how it is transmitted, and what is the quality of the data that you're looking at. And I think in that context, shipping really has to shape up to the, cybersecurity threats and how to mitigate that. So that would probably be one aspect. I mentioned that the diversity of fuels will play an important role going forward. So we talked a lot about that. So, but I think that will also put a lot of, say, challenges and demands on everyone working in the industry. And then maybe the last point, the third point, would probably be how can we use augmented or virtual reality to really speed up training, to really, put not only our surveyors but the crew in a good environment where they can really leverage from a much faster training experience.
Okay.
And if you are in a simulator, you can have, say, 10 hours of training in a simulator that maybe can replace a year training on board a vessel, because you're just exposed to so much more at a much more efficient time frame. So I think those are probably my three choices of how I see technologies are really shaping shipping going forward.
When you look at cybersecurity and maritime, what do you see as the most important immediate steps to ensuring that a ship in a facility are cybersecure?
Yeah, so I think what we did towards SMM was to make our recommended practice for cybersecurity resilience management available to the industry. That is a good guide on what to look for, what are the threats, how can you mitigate those threats. But I think what you're raising is maybe even before that, there's something about awareness. There's something about realizing what are the threats that any ship could face today. And in that context, I would say that we introduced also an e-learning module intended for not only the onshore personnel, but also the crew. And that is really to raise awareness, because a lot of the issues has to do with the awareness. Exactly like you say, if you receive one of these memory sticks and you plug it into your computer, you could introduce accidentally malware or other things that could jeopardize the functions of the vessel. So really increasing awareness with the onshore and the crew. And then I think also what we've done, which I find really very practical, is to introduce an app. And I think this is quite cool that a classification society introduces an app that you can download from the App Store. But that app is really helping you as a ship owner or ship manager to assess the risks for your vessel or your fleet. And it's a self-assessment tool where you're basically going through a series of questions that helps you realize what are the threats facing my vessel or my operation. And then the next step would be to try and find mitigating measures against these. And I think that is a truly very practical, hands-on approach to really increase the awareness and the resilience against cyber threats.
As you well know, this is a very conservative industry, set in its way in some regards. Also, there is a changing of the guard of some sorts from a generational aspect. So how do you see DNV GL challenging the status quo of this industry, of not doing what has always been done with an eye on the present, but also on the future?
Yeah, I think this is a really very good question, because it's in times like we are facing now, it's a lot about really challenging status quo and look at how can we work smarter, how can we work better, and how can we be more efficient as the times and the markets are changing. We did some, as I briefly mentioned, on the Next Generation Summit that we arranged to really connect our younger employees with the more senior experienced employees. It's really looking at new ways of doing old stuff, really challenging what is, say, outside of the box. And I think what we are doing on the drone survey is one such aspect, but maybe more importantly, what we are doing now with employing data analysts to really look into, big data sets, and how we can match that knowledge with that domain knowledge that we are well known to have and have had for 150 years. And I think these are some of the opportunities and great potential that lies ahead of us if we are able to match, say, the new possibilities, the data-rich environment with that of domain knowledge, and to really make, have those young, brilliant employees challenge old ways of doing things. And not everything will fly naturally, but to be able to look at some of those and try some of those out will be important for DNV GL going forward.
This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and again, we thank Knut for sharing his time and his insights with us.